أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. ألم تر إلى الملأ من بني إسرائيل من بعد موسى إذ قالوا لنبي له ابعث لنا ملكا نقاتل في سبيل الله قال هل عسيتم إن كتب عليكم القتال ألا تقاتلوا قالوا وما لنا ألا نقاتل في سبيل الله وقد أخرجنا من ديارنا وأبنائنا فلما كتب عليهم القتال تولوا إلا قليلا منهم والله عليم بالظالمين. وقال لهم نبيهم إن الله قد بعث لكم طالوت ملكا قالوا أنى يكون له الملك علينا ونحن أحق بالملك منه ولم يؤت سعة من المال قال إن الله اصطفاه عليكم وزاده بسطة في العلم والجسم والله يؤتي ملكه من يشاء والله واسع عليم. وقال لهم نبيهم إن آية ملكه أن يأتيكم التابوت فيه سكينة من ربكم وبقية مما ترك آل موسى وآل هارون تحمله الملائكة إن في ذلك لآية لكم إن كنتم مؤمنين. فلما فصل طالوت بالجنود قال إن الله مبتليكم بنهر قال إن الله مبتليكم بنهر فمن شرب منه فليس مني فإنه مني بيده فشربوا منه إلا قليلا منهم فلما جاوزه هو والذين آمنوا معه قالوا لا طاقة لنا اليوم بجالوت وجنوده قال الذين يظنون أنهم ملاقو الله يظنون أنهم ملاقو الله كم من فئة قليلة غلبت فئة كثيرة بإذن الله والله مع الصابرين ولما برزوا لجالوت وجنوده قالوا ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين فهزموهم بإذن الله وقتل داود جالوت وآتاه الله الملك والحكمة وعلمه مما يشاء ولولا دفع الله الناس بعضهم ببعض لفسدت الأرض ولكن الله ذو فضل على العالمين تلك آيات الله نتلوها عليك بالحق وإنك لمن المرسلين
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Prophet, consider the leaders of the children of Israel who came after Moses when they said to one of their prophets, "Set up a king for us, and we shall fight in God's cause." He said, "But could it be that you would not fight if it were ordained for you?" They said, "How could we not fight in God's cause when we and our children have been driven out of our homeland?" Yet when they were commanded to fight, all but a few of them turned away. God has full knowledge of those who do wrong. Their prophet said to them, "God has now appointed Talut to be your king." But they said, "How can he be a king over us when we have a greater right to rule than he? He does not even have great wealth." He said, "God has chosen him over you and has given him great knowledge and stature. God grants his authority to whoever he pleases. God is magnanimous, all-knowing." Their prophet said to them, "The sign of his authority will be that the ark of the covenant will come to you. In it there will be the gift of tranquility from your Lord, and relics of the followers of Moses and Aaron, carried by the angels. There is a sign in this for you, if you believe." When Talut set out with his forces, he said to them, "God will test you with a river. Anyone who drinks from it will not belong with me, but anyone who refrains from tasting it will belong with me. If he scoops up just one handful, he will be excused." But they all drank deep from it, except for a few. When he crossed it with those who had kept faith, they said, "We have no strength today against Goliath and his warriors." But those who knew that they were going to meet their Lord said, "How often a small force has defeated a large army with God's permission. God is with those who are steadfast." And when they met Goliath and his warriors, they said, "Our Lord, pour patience on us, make us stand firm and help us against the disbelievers." And so with God's permission, they defeated them. David killed Goliath, and God gave him sovereignty and wisdom and taught him what he pleased. If God did not drive some back by means of others, the earth would be completely corrupt. But God is bountiful to all. These are the revelations of God which we recite to you, Muhammad, with the truth, and you truly are one of the messengers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us of this incident. And in fact, I'm going to start at the end of the passage that our Imam recited. That at the end of this passage, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us that this isn't just a story, isn't just a fable, that this is something that is true, that truly took place. So we should bear that in mind when we look at this this parable, this incident that took place. And there are a few points of benefit that I want to pick up on from this incident. So this incident of starting with the Banu Israel, the children of Israel, and them saying to their prophet, appoint for us a king, so that we may fight the people who have oppressed us and who have taken our lands and our sons. And the first point of reflection and tadabbur that I wanted to look at is, why is this incident not narrated in the first juz of the Quran? We know and we see many incidents and the stories related to Banu Israel and things that occurred with them is narrated in the first juz of the Quran. We find, their oppression at the hands of Fir'aun, and then Musa alayhi salam taking them out of Egypt, the Fir'aun being drowned, Musa alayhi salam going to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 40 days, and the Banu Israel worshipping the calf in that time, and so on and so forth. So all of these things that took place with Banu Israel mentioned in the first juz. And there's a difference between this incident that is narrated to us here and those. In that the earlier incidences that are narrated to us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us of, are all related to, if you see, how Banu Israel disobeyed, how they asked lots of questions. Why should we slaughter a cow? What kind of cow? What color? All the cows are the same to us. Musa alayhi salam goes for 40 days, they begin worshipping a calf. All their kind of disobedience. We want to see Allah. We want to have different food than just the manna and salwa that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had sent. So all of these kind of questions and acts of disobedience that they did, mentioned in the first juz. And you can connect that very much to right at the beginning of the Quran, Al-Fatiha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, we make the dua, ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, and at the end of Al-Fatiha, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ. We don't want to be like those who have earned Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's anger, upon whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's anger has come. And the examples given of Banu Israel in the first juz, you can see actually they all relate to this. But this incident is different. This incident is very much about the successful ones, about the success that following the messengers brings, and about the success that obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings, the blessings that we gain. And in fact, you can see some of the subsequent ayahs just slightly after this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, Allahu waliyul ladina amanu. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the protector of those who believe. Or we find Ibrahim alayhi salam and his debate with the tyrant king, the tyrant ruler, who is saying, I give life and I give death. And Ibrahim alayhi salam debates with him and argues with him, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants him victory in that debate. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bringing his blessings to those who believe in him and obey him, and those who follow the messengers. So this was point one, about the placing of this narrative, this incident. Point two, why did Banu Israel ask their prophet to appoint a king? Okay, think about these things. When you read the Quran, try and think about these things, reflect upon these things, and you'll draw, inshallah, many points of benefit. So firstly, we would say, why ask the prophet? This was a virtuous, pious person who was also knowledge and wise in terms of the religion. So these are people who you should refer to in cases of dispute, okay, in cases of difference. And this was a case of dispute. There were many tribes of Banu Israel, the 10 tribes of Banu Israel, the children of Israel, who they all had their own leaders, and they were, couldn't agree on a leader. So they asked their prophet, appoint for us a king. We see, the need for leadership in undertaking an endeavor. And the point that I wanted to make on this specific issue is we often find ourselves, from our worldly experience, having learned something. So, we might, those of us working in the corporate world might have some experience with project management, might be able to quote the need of leadership there. Or, our experiences with the environment, being environmentally friendly. Okay, we've learned some things from our worldly lives there. Similar with our health, and so on and so forth. And what we tend to do is we take our worldly experience and then we look for a validation in the deen. We look for an ayah or a hadith, okay, and we'll say, oh yeah, look, here's an example. They needed a leader to carry out this endeavor. That means that must be right. But instead, one of the things we should try to do is first look to the revelation, make that primary for us. And our worldly experience is just secondary, supporting that. So wherever we find something Islamic, something from the revelation, that is our primary source. But back to, why did Banu Israel ask their prophet to appoint a king? One of the things we note is they're looking for external motivation. They're looking for something outside. Appoint for us a king so that we can make jihad. Why couldn't they make jihad before? They didn't have the internal motivation. And you see that relying on external motivation is something weak. Because when jihad was made obligatory for them, they turned away. They didn't, most of them turned away. Most of them weren't able to follow through because they didn't have that internal motivation. And the same goes for us. We can seek, validation and motivation through external sources, perhaps someone buddies up with someone to read Quran or so on or so forth, to do some good deeds. This is a good thing, there's no doubt. But that can't be the core of our motivation, because that can easily fall apart. If you make your motivation connected to something external, this isn't going to last. This isn't a solid foundation to build. Just like the Banu Israel here, they made their motivation something external, but then they turned away. Point 3. So point 2, why did Banu Israel ask their prophet to appoint a king? Point 3, who was appointed as their leader? Okay, who was appointed as their leader? So think about who it was. They were looking, hoping for someone from amongst them, a noble, one of the leaders of the tribes. So that when their prophet told them it was Talut, okay, who is narrated, some said that he was just a soldier, some said, various other things, but not a common person amongst them. They said, how can this be? How can he have dominion, authority over us? He's nobody. He's not a noble. He doesn't even have any money. And what is the first thing that the prophet replied? Inna Allah astafahu alaykum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen him over you. And this is so important. The first response wasn't what his virtues were over there. The first response, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen him over you. And this is again the way we need to look at the way we practice in that. And in fact, one of the quotes that I always find particularly powerful is Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah. He said about Surah Al-Asr, okay, wal asr inna al-insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu s-salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. He said about this surah that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hadn't revealed anything else, this would be sufficient as an evidence for us. Okay, sufficient for us that we should know to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we should know to believe in him and do righteous deeds. And actually you find this throughout, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he gives us that we have firstly the primary reason, Inna Allah astafahu alaykum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen him over you. That's why he's your king, first and foremost. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also gives wisdoms and reasons and things like this. So here it was that because he has knowledge and physical stature, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has increased him in these things. That's also why. And we see this elsewhere as well, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just like we said, Imam Shafi'i said about Surah Al-Asr, that if that was alone was revealed, it would be sufficient. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the whole of the Quran, sent the messenger alayhi salatu wassalam. We find this, the descriptions of Jannah and of paradise and hellfire. that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam informed us that in Jannah there are things that you can't even comprehend. Okay, similar with the fire, you can't even imagine. And yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us description after description. And it is out of His mercy that He does this for us, so that we can better understand, so that we have more opportunities, so that He makes it easy for us. And in this case, not only did the Prophet inform them of why Talut, Saul, was appointed over them as their king, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also sent signs that the angels came down carrying this chest, this treasure chest of things that, you know, they thought lost to them, the relics of Musa alayhi salam and Harun alayhi salam, the relics from their time. So that was point 3. Who was appointed as their leader? Why was he appointed? You know, what was the reasons? What benefits do we draw from that? Point 4, and this is perhaps the most important reflection and points of benefit from this incident. Look at the tests that they were given. We can count at least 3 tests that Banu Israel were given in this incident. Firstly was the acceptance of Talut, of Saul's kingship over them. Okay, they didn't understand it. It didn't make sense to them. This isn't a noble, this isn't someone with wealth or anything else. It didn't make sense to them. Then the second thing, they go to this river, and their king Talut, he says to them that, you know, when we're passing this river, we've just been on a long journey, you know, we're marching to go and fight a battle. You can't drink from this river, you can't have the water. Okay, except if you have just barely a handful. Doesn't make sense. Why? Why can't we do this? Okay, and then, so second test. Third test, they see this army, or even before they see this army, they cross the river. Most of them have now gone back. So firstly, most of them rejected it when the command came, the jihad, and Talut was appointed as their king. Then the few that are left, most of them leave when they get this command not to drink from the river. And then they're left with a few, and they see this army, and they say, "La taqata lana al-yawm." We don't have any power today. We're just a tiny army. So 3 tests that, you know, one of us might say, why? Why is it like this? Why are we being tested in this way? But the point of benefit here is it was those who followed the messenger, who remained the prophet, who the king, who followed Talut, who remained steadfast throughout, who were successful. And we often find, you know, success is often put down to leadership. You know, there was a good leader, that's why this thing was successful. Okay, this country's got a good leader, look how well they're doing. But we find actually the best examples of leaders, the prophets, alayhimus salatu wassalam, the best leaders, their nations weren't successful. Why were they not successful? Because of the followers. Because they didn't have the high quality followers who were steadfast. Okay, so success is very much not the responsibility of the leader. Yes, they have a part to play, but it is the responsibility of us as the followers, of the parts of the community who should be following our leaders and following and obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way that is correct and with steadfastness and patience. And that's what determines the success. And on a similar note, we often focus in this incident on Dawood and Jalut, David and Goliath. And you know, every one of us, we love the story of, let's call it an underdog, okay, someone, the weak overcoming the strong. It's very powerful, okay, always appeals to us. But Dawood, know that Dawood was just a means for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant victory to those who had followed, those who had faith and remained steadfast. Dawood was just the main means that they chose. And in fact, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that the army of Talut, of Saul, defeated Goliath's army, the first thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَهَزَمُوهُمْ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. Okay, before mentioning Dawood killing Goliath, the first thing, they defeated them with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's permission, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will. Okay, so this isn't a story of David and Goliath. This is a story of steadfastness and following and obeying. and we find who was it who were truly victorious. What was the cause of the victory? Was firstly those who remained steadfast throughout these tests. They said that الَّذِينَ يَظُنُّونَ أَنَّهُمْ مُلَاقُو اللَّهِ. Okay, it was those who they had faith that they would meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they said, Wallahu ma'as-sabirin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the patient ones, the steadfast ones. So it was these who were really granted the victory. And Dawood was just the means. And it is faith and steadfastness that led to their success. And we find this again, that in the hadith where the man came to the Prophet ﷺ and he asked the Prophet ﷺ to tell him something that he wouldn't be able to get from anyone after the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, and it's well known hadith, قُلْ رَبِّي اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُ. Say, my Lord is Allah, and then be firm on that. Okay? So steadfastness is such a great thing. Such a great thing. That leads one to success, that this man couldn't even hear from anyone else after the Prophet ﷺ. And the lesson for us in this, or the kind of follow-on point of benefit, is you don't need to worry about being the Dawood of your time, of your story, of your situation. You need to worry about being like the followers of Talut. That's what each one of us needs to worry about being. Worry about our obedience, our steadfastness, our faith. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to select who will be the Dawood from amongst us, or from outside of us even, who will be the one who victory is used as a means for victory. So point 4, the importance of following and being steadfast in these tests. And then the 5th point, a kind of general point on this. What do we learn from this? What does this incident teach us? So you can see that the start point of this incident, the state of Banu Israel, was one of corruption. They were disputing amongst each other. They couldn't even accept from their prophet, even though they asked him, who can be our king? They wouldn't even accept from him at that point who was appointed. They asked, to the king so that they could do jihad. When jihad was then the ability was there, they turned away. So corruption was present amongst them. And then they go with the steadfastness and the faith of the followers, they granted success. Okay, this was a success for all of them, because they defeated the army that was oppressing them and taking their land and their children. And we find that in the second to last ayah that Imam Adil recited for us, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, if God did not drive some back by means of others, the earth would be completely corrupt. The earth would be corrupted. So you can contrast the beginning and the end point of this incident. Okay, the state of corruption in the beginning, okay, and the state of success and victory and iman at the end, and see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used some people to check other people and prevent corruption in the earth. And in fact, one of the things that the scholars mentioned about one of the ayat that were covered yesterday, about the hypocrites, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ, that it said to the hypocrites, don't cause mischief, corruption in the earth. One of the explanations of this is that their disobedience, okay, and their disunity is what leads to the corruption. Okay, it's a cause of corruption appearing on the earth. And such was the state of Banu Israel. Okay, so their state was such that perhaps it was the cause of the corruption that they were in. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then used them also to remove the corruption. Okay. So we see this contrast from beginning to end, this contrast of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used a people to remove corruption from the earth, and in fact put them in a situation where they are almost forced to do so. And as I said, it is a story of not of disobedience, but primarily one of victory through iman, faith and steadfastness and sabr. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those who are patient and steadfast in the face of all of his tests. Not just, we're facing a test right now, no doubt, but this is a very small part of our life. Maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 6 months. Our lives will be longer than this, and it is, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us steadfast in all of our tests, remain with faith in all of our tests, and make our tests a source of obedience and victory for us, just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it for Bani Israel in this case, in this instant, with